Well, so we've talked a lot about consilience, and sort of the meaning of which is a kind of sudden leaping together, a sort of sudden connectivity that maybe wasn't there before. But I think there's another term that's really important when we're talking about complexity, and that's resilience. And that's actually in sort of cultural studies and science studies particularly, this is a really important term right now. It's a really hot term. And, we get from complexity studies and systems thinking pretty solid evidence that a complex system is much more resilient than a simple system. A non-linear system is much more resilient than a linear system. And so thinking about complexity, particularly in relation to, how we form communities, how we should form communities, how we think about our environment, how we create policies to address things like climate change and so on and so forth, which is also something that's really important to me. This question of resilience becomes extremely important, right? And so if you have a company that's strictly linear and hierarchical, right, that's going to be, and this is really, Lauren's point about, it relates to cities really instead of companies, right? Cities are much more complex and therefore they're much more resilient. That's why they're harder to kill, right? They're also more likely to change over time and adapt and move this way and move that way. And this neighborhood suddenly is the one where everyone wants to live. And that neighborhood where everyone did want to live is starting to die out, and then that will change over the course of 10 years. Whereas corporations, which are simple linear systems, are much more vulnerable. Right? Communication works that way as well, right? The movement of information through a system, it might not move as quickly in a nonlinear system, but it's more likely to get to its source. Because if you have, and think about, a place where you might work, if you have this guy who reports to this guy, who reports to this guy, who reports to this guy in a linear system, and one of those guys in the middle is out sick, your information is not going to make it up the chain or down the chain to the person it needs to get to. But if there are multiple networks of interconnected people, the odds of sending your information out and it arriving at its destination is much more likely, even if it has to go through, 3 or 4 people.